Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 14 of Mass Communication 200. This week, we're going to be going over social media journalism, and that will prepare us for our very last assignment of the semester, which is creating a social media video package. So, in talking about social media's role for journalism, we obviously recognize that social media and digital performance are going to be important parts of your job regardless of what kind of journalist you're going to be. But the roles that social media play for journalists have been changing regularly. Originally, when social media came out as a tool for journalists to use, it was primarily used as a dissemination tool. It meant that journalists could share information with audience members in a new way. Now, that has grown significantly. Over 50% of US adults 18 and older get news from social media now. And so that means that all journalists are needing to kind of use this convergent media practice. So even if you're working for a newspaper, you are also going to be responsible for posting your stories and your content to social media as well. Now, Twitter and other platforms are also able to get information out in real time without a paywall, which makes them really great for live videos, for live tweeting of meetings, and other things that can give the public more access to information than they probably have ever had before. Now, journalists not only use social media to get information out, but also to get information in. A lot of journalists are now finding that they are able to get story ideas, they're able to get tips and other things through social media content by following trends, by following influential people, watching what other organizations are posting through media alerts. Social media has become one of the primary ways that journalists get story ideas that they can then work on for both traditional and digital platforms. It's also important to remember that social media remains an important part of journalistic practice because it makes business sense. It is a great way for organizations to make money off of news. And so we have to think about news as a product that the news organizations are selling and not only a public service. This allows us to create better business models that keep the organization afloat. In addition, social media is important for your personal branding as an individual journalist. You can become more influential, you can become more professional the better you handle your social media accounts. So it's important that you start now as a student journalist so that by the time that you're hired as a professional journalist, you'll already have that as part of your job performance. And that's important because some organizations are using social media analytics and metrics as an indicator of how successful you are at your job. It's no longer about whether you're able to win an Emmy or a Murrow or whether you are meeting all your deadlines. Now you also have to be engaging on social media to be considered one of the best journalists for your organization. And social media also allows you to interact with other fellow journalists, which can be helpful career wise and professionally. So let's delve a little bit deeper into each of these topics. As I said before, this was one of the primary reasons for journalists to use social media was to get information out to the public in a new way. Now, when you're writing for social media, the same rules of journalism apply. You need to be objective. You need to source information, and your sources should be the ones providing emotion, opinion, or unverified facts. You need to balance your reporting just like you would for an actual traditional news source. And you need to be neutral in your presentation. You should not be part of the story when you're reporting on social media. Now, the great thing about social media dissemination is that it allows you to do it in real time. So, you want to coordinate this with your traditional coverage. For instance, if you're offering a live broadcast of meeting or an event, you're also going to want to provide that live coverage through a live story on, let's say, Facebook or Instagram Live. And then you're also going to want to do live tweeting. Now, that means that journalists are being asked to do more than ever before because while you may have had a videographer who was producing live coverage, that journalist was collecting information. They were writing as that live coverage was happening so that when it came time for them to actually report on air, they would be ready. But now the journalist is not only having to get information, they're not only having to pay attention to the event, but they're having to live tweet while doing all of this. And sometimes they're also responsible for doing the live coverage because they don't have a videographer. So a lot of times as a journalist, you're going to have to coordinate real time information and storytelling while still doing your regular job. And that can be difficult. You need to continue to update your story even after it's published and use threads or stories for longer coverage patterns, like you can see here from Jonah Cassell. You also want to verify your facts before posting. And this is crucial for social media, particularly because so often you're getting information and tweets or story ideas from sources that you don't know. And so you have to be able to verify the information you're sharing before you actually post it. And if you mess up, which is likely in the age of social media, you need to issue a correction or apology like Bloomberg did with their story on New Zealand. Now, and some other key tips for disseminating information or sharing social media coverage is that you need to keep it short. We have the Twitter character limit, but there are many ways to get around that. But you want to follow the same guidance regardless of whether there's a character limit or not. When you're writing for social media, you're typically writing 2 to 3 sentences maximum. And the most important part of that is making it visual because people are not likely to read your actual words unless they become engaged in the story first. And that means creating visuals that are engaging or even videos that can capture the audience's attention. Now, video is perhaps king on social media because not only because it makes it more engaging for your viewers, but also because it affects your analytics. The longer someone sits on your post to watch your video or to click into the video, the more engagement you're able to capture and then sell to advertisers. And so, social media video is really important for journalists these days. You also want to use relevant hashtags and tags. This allows people who are outside of your followers to become engaged with it because they are either following a hashtag or they are following someone else. And then when you tag them, they see that. So it's a way to draw engagement and followers to your platform. You also want to link to additional content. Typically, you're trying to drive traffic from social media to your website and maybe even to your traditional media coverage. For instance, if you're like, check out the story today at 10 on the newscast, then you're trying to drive viewers as well. But you're always wanting to provide some kind of interactive material for your viewers so that they become engaged with your platform and feel like they are part of your storytelling. You also want to make sure it's timely. For instance, you can see in this PBS NewsHour, it says live now. And so they're wanting you to engage with them right this second. And so that kind of forces the viewer or the listener in this case to interact right now, and it gives them a little bit of pressure to do that engagement with you in the timely manner. And of course, breaking stories is really important on social media, but remember, it's more important to get it right than it is to get it first. You also want to make sure that you're connecting to news values, and this is part of capturing that audience attention. If you can connect to the news values that we discussed earlier in the semester within your writing, that's going to make it seem more important to your viewers. So, in order to gather information as a journalist, there are many things that you should be doing. The first is that you should follow influential accounts for your community and beyond. If you are not following the University of Montevallo or, the various social pages that we have and you're trying to report for the university, you're missing out on a huge source of information that you could be drawing story ideas from. In addition, you're going to want to follow influential people like the mayor of your town, city council members, things like that, because they often will post things on their social media account that you can then turn into stories. Organizations typically have platforms or applications that will track trends on social media. What are the things that people are talking about most? But it's important for us as individual journalists to also kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. You can do this by seeing like what's trending on Twitter for your local location and things like that. But just staying aware of what people are talking about on social and then trying to utilize that within your story ideas and what kinds of stories you're telling. You need to research anything that you're getting on social media, but social media is also a great place to do research. If you're not fully aware of a topic, a lot of times you can go in and do research within social media from verified sources to make sure that the story you're telling is appropriate. A lot of journalists are also asking for story ideas or leads on social media. They may even look for sources through social media. I've seen people who are like, hey, this is going on in this particular community. If you're affected, either comment here or direct message me, or they might provide their email address. So you can ask for leads and sources directly through your social account as well. Sometimes you want to read the comments on news posts to generate new ideas. The problem is, a lot of comments on social media are going to be very negative, particularly for women and minorities. Harassment on social media for journalists is a huge growing problem. And so I want you to read the comments, but in a healthy way, that you're looking for sources of information and interacting with your audience as much as possible, but don't interact with people who are harassing you or treating you unfairly. Those are something that you're going to have to learn how your organization copes with, if they want you to report it, delete it, etc., or just plain ignore it. But make sure you're taking care of yourself as you're reading all of that negative feedback from on social media, because it can be very damaging for your mental health. You're also going to want to scrutinize your sources thoroughly on social media. Just because you get a story tip or a suggestion on social doesn't mean it's true. You need to research and investigate every single thing that you're doing, so that you're really making sure that you're following all the protocols and all of the journalism practices that we follow for traditional media on social as well. Now, I've talked throughout the semester about how business models of journalism dictate what you report on. And this is not necessarily a negative thing, but social media was a large driver in the concept of using news as a product that you can sell. Traditionally, news has been a public service. It's something that we do just to help the community. And that's why a lot of people go into journalism. But because of the lowered bar for being able to disseminate information, thanks to the web and social media, it's important that journalists also think about the business of news in order to keep themselves relevant, in order to keep the association or organization that you're working for profitable. Because you can't be a journalist if you're not being paid to do so. It's a profession. And so it's important that we as individual journalists think about news as a product, about how we can gain more viewers, gain more readership and followers on social. And one of the best ways to do that is by following the analytics and metrics that your social media and digital accounts create. Because metrics and analytics are all about what matters most to your audience and really trying to capitalize on what is most important to your viewers or your audience. So, from a basic analytics report, this is from The Guardian that they shared, that's on one single news story on the Pakistan church bombings. Um, and so this is just analytics for one social media story that they can go into, and they find out how many views it's had. They can see how long people were typically on the story. They can see how many words people on average were likely to have read. They can see where people are getting the story from. So here you can see that directly from their website and Twitter were the most popular places to get it from within this few day period. Where is it being read? Is it being read on a mobile device? Is it being read in the United States? Things like that. So you can see what kind of content is performing best, what is the most engaging, but then you can also see how long people are viewing things, which can dictate how long you want your stories to be. And you can see when people are watching, what time specifically, like down to the minute. You can see what time is when most people are interacting on social media. You can see what type of device people are accessing it from. You can see where they are in terms of location, and you can know who your audience is by delving into demographics like age, race, gender. You can find things like religion, what types of websites they get on. And so analytics can be a really great way to understand your audience and what your audience wants. In addition, we have to keep in mind that advertisers are paying for ad space on news organizations based on clicks, views, and the influence of individual journalists. And this makes social media and digital performance an essential element of journalism business. And so it is important that you go into the business knowing how to do well for your organization. Because if you can make your news organization money, then you will be an invaluable part of that newsroom. Now, in order to do that, you as an individual journalist have to be professional in the ways that you conduct yourself on social media. The first step is to create a professional social media account. And this means that you are not posting things about your daily life. In fact, you should go through and scrub all of your personal accounts of any information you wouldn't want an employer to see. Obviously, that's something that every news organization is doing in the hiring process. But you should have a professional social media account. And usually, when you join an organization, they're going to make you create one specific for that organization. But when you're on the job and preparing for the job market, this is something you need to do by yourself. So, in addition to a professional looking headshot, which you need to get for your social media accounts, there are some other elements that you should be including within your bios. You want to tag organizations that you currently or formally report for. So if you're reporting for ValidVision News, that needs to be in your bio. If you report for the Alabamian, that needs to be in your bio. If you've interned anywhere, needs to be in your bio. You also want to tag any other projects or accounts that you're associated with in terms of professionalism, such as any podcasts that you belong to. Maybe you have your own YouTube channel, things like that. Those should also be included as long as they're professional in your bio. You want to have some contact for people to send news tips to. And you want to indicate that by saying like tips or story ideas and then giving the contact information. Also, make sure that you're including any relevant hashtags of something that you cover often because you want to make sure that People who are engaged in that particular topic that you regularly cover will follow you as a source of information. You also want to work on getting verified on Twitter by getting that blue check mark. That's a very common goal for professionals, but it can be somewhat difficult to do. So, as you continue in your professional career, try to get verified because that will add credibility to your social media reporting. In terms of social media conduct, the New York Times guidelines for journalists heavily emphasizes respect on social media as well as objective reporting. So just because we're stepping out from a traditional media source does not mean that we lose our traditional media values. So we still want to be objective and neutral. We still want to be highly respectful and balanced in the ways that we report. Now, it is true that people who name call, who create controversy, who start these Twitter wars on social media can have good engagement results. They do get buzz, they do get clicks, they can gain new followers, but it does more harm than good professionally because you become a risk to a future employer when you do things like this. So you want to keep your professional and personal accounts completely separate, and honestly, I would not post anything on your social media account, even on your personal page, that you wouldn't want the public to see because we all know that it can be found and people will find it, especially when you become a name that people can recognize. There are also suggestions from the Community Journalism Research Project that they say will be surefire ways to get fired, including profanity or vulgarity in your tweets, expressing political views, doing a foot in your mouth, which essentially means not being politically correct or not being respectful of all groups of people, including off the record material that you wouldn't typically report, and then personal rants also um, can get you fired. And it can also get you a good lawsuit for libel or slander when you begin ranting against someone because it shows that you have a vendetta or, a bias, a prejudice against that source. So, in order to build a following in a positive way, you're going to want to create larger followings because having larger audiences for your social media account means you have a larger reach. It means you can get information out to more people. So, you want to ask directly for followers and build up your followers over time. Be engaging with them, create content that they want to see, not only in terms of the news that you're producing, but also showing them your life in whatever way you feel comfortable. And this has become widely controversial for journalism because it's like, how much can you show of your personal life without becoming biased or not being neutral anymore? And so this is something that's currently undergoing scrutiny in the organization of news because journalists are unsure of where that boundary lies and how much is too much to share. But things you can do are take viewers behind the scenes, like they've done here. People are fascinated with news and television. They want to know how it works. If you can show them, it often gets really high engagement. Some stations are going to require that you're pretty personal in the ways that you communicate. Zoe Tillman actually shared about her maternity leave, and she, shared about her baby. This is very common for mothers who are also journalists to do now, although it is controversial because many people don't want to share that personal of information on social media. However, sometimes stations will require you to do that because they are wanting you to create this brand and this image that people can get an inside look at. So there are some stations that have protocols about how often you have to report from your personal life. You need to know, are you comfortable with that? And if you're not, then that's a station or a news organization you may not want to work for. It's often a factor how large your following is or how much engagement your posts get on whether you're doing well performance wise in a news organization. In fact, some news organizations have leaderboards that they keep on, digital screens on TV monitors all day long. in the newsroom. I know here locally, Fox 6 News in Birmingham does this, NBC 13 does this here in Birmingham. And they have uh, engagement and metrics that rank people not only within the station itself, but within the ownership across the country to see who is performing best on social media. And that can be a very influential factor in terms of whether the station thinks you're doing well as a reporter. And so it is very important that you pay attention to your social media and you build a following. Another way to build following is to interact with other journalists. This can be good just in terms of creating a professional rapport within your industry, but it can also help you grow your your engagement and your followers overall. So ask for followers from within the field. There is a Facebook group specifically for women. Sorry, guys, but it is called MM Janes, and it's for women who are television reporters. I joined this group years and years ago when I was in the business, and it's a place where they have. Follower Wednesdays, I think it's called, and you post your social media account and ask people to follow you on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to grow your following from within the field. And then the understanding is that you then do that for a fellow journalist. And it's just about building wider numbers and engagement. But also, when you're connecting with people from within your field, it also allows you to gain new story ideas. You get to see what people across the country are doing. And so it's generally a good idea to interact with other journalists while building your following. So, for our assignment for social media, we're going to be doing a video package. Now, of course, you do not have to do a video story to engage on social media, but in order to help us put together everything that we've learned from across the semester in terms of writing, how we utilize sound, how we utilize video within a story, the social media video package is a great way to do that. So, a social media video package is a short informational piece that uses graphics and visuals to tell the story. The great thing about social media video packages is that you can do this very easily with very limited editing and videography skills. In fact, most news outlets are using images that are created from someone else. So these pictures probably were not taken by the station. They were taken by the mom of this little girl. And then the station got permission to use them for this story. So it doesn't require high quality equipment or training. It doesn't require a ton of work on your end, but they are very important because they generate great analytics and metrics that help gain advertisers for your station. So here is the piece from CBS News. And a lot of times there's not going to be
Violet asked, why
sound on
does
it.
she need money? And I kind of explained that she didn't have food or a home.
So they're using images along with the graphics and music to tell the story. And when you think about it, most people are not going to click into the story to actually listen to it. So the sound is less important here than the graphics themselves. The graphics need to be written in subject, verb, object
the work
format.
that she put in to that contribution and then wanting to come down and present it in person with her little handwritten envelope is very, very special.
So if you do have a soundbite, you need to have the verbatim in the bottom because, again, people may not be fully listening to it.
With projections looking the way they are, with COVID numbers rising, we really anticipate that that's going to continue to climb and increase through the winter months.
Make sure that your graphics are full sentences as well. That's really important for social media, and that they're written in AP style for print. And so, even though this is a broadcast station, it's a CBS affiliate that is doing this story, they are writing it in terms of print AP style because it's appearing in text to the viewers. So, this is the kind of story you're going to create. I'm not going to require that you use sound bites for this, like the CBS story did, but it's going to be very similar. So, make sure you name, date, and slug, which of course is just the title of your package when you're filling out your package. The total runtime of the story is how long in seconds it's going to be. The package out cue is the last three words that will be included either in the graphics or in a soundbite if you choose to use one. I want you to think about what type of music would be appropriate for your story and its topic, but make sure you're using a license free music site. So you need to own the rights to the music that you're using. You'll just include like a link to the song so I can listen to it and judge its appropriateness. You're going to need to describe the video in enough detail that if I'm not seeing the images, if you choose not to do the full story, I still know what's on the screen. So I need to, know that we have a little girl dressed up in a Halloween costume, wearing a mask, standing next to her table, selling the product for the fundraiser, things like that. So that's the type of video description that I would need. You need to say how long in seconds it's going to run. If you're going to have any voices, then that needs to go first. But typically, it's just going to be the six graphics that you're writing and placing on the screen if you're going to do the full story. And remember, these six facts need to be in subject, verb, object, sentence format. They need to be full sentences written in AP style for print with good grammar. They need to be readable in very um, quick time frame. Think about how short the sentences were in the package that you just watched. Um, that's how short they need to be for your work as well, because most of the time your graphics overlay is only going to be 10 seconds each. So each sentence needs to be read within 10 seconds for a total of a 1 minute story. So that's what your assignment is going to be, to create your own story using a social media package. And I will give up to 20 additional bonus points if you attempt to actually create the story as opposed to just doing the script. But what is required of the class for your 60 points is the script part right here. Now that we've talked about social media and its importance for journalists, I want you to watch the short socialnomics video that talks about how important social media is to our business and economics. This is not just for journalism, but media in general. And I think it's important for us to keep a pulse on, just how influential social media are. So I would highly suggest watching this video. You have two discussion board posts this week because of Thanksgiving break. I'm not having um, they're not very long or complicated, but I just want us to have these discussion boards available for points for your grades, honestly, and for us to discuss the importance of social media. Make sure you read over the full social media assignment, and then your pitch is due by November 30th at midnight. You're also going to want to create a resume if you don't have one already over the break, because on November 30th, your discussion post is going to be sharing your resume. So I and your peers can critique your resume and give you feedback as you begin building one for journalism. I hope you guys have a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions you may have.